Welcome to Truth Sentinel, watching over the truth in the news. Today's date is the 19th of November 2014. I'm here in Odessa, Ukraine. This is my hotel room. I thought I'd just say a quick hello at the beginning and the end of this episode. So please join us for this episode about cults, religions and Scientology. Hello to everyone, thanks for joining us. Still here in Odessa, Ukraine, but maybe on the move to Thailand soon as the weather's getting quite cold and rainy and wet over here. Still no problems in Odessa, as reported before. Hope it stays that way. We will be returning to Ukraine, hopefully, if all stays peaceful in Odessa anyway. We'll return in maybe in a few months to see what's happening over here. But probably off to Thailand soon. Was thinking of stopping in Israel as well, but I'm not sure if funds are going to allow that. This is episode 32, so if there's any you've missed in the past, go check them out. Our previous episode was about political correctness, and the one before that was about nuclear disasters and potential nuclear disasters around the world. Check those out if you haven't yet. There's also other episodes like interviews with Sean Stone, Gareth Icke, Jasvinder Singh about honour killings, lots to check out. Quick appeal for shares. Please post episodes on Facebook, share with friends, download, upload, tweet on Twitter. Appreciate any help you can with promoting this site. I think that's one big thing that needs to be done. If you've got any help with finding guests, then please contact us with suggestions or contact the guests yourself and put them in touch. Also ideas and for topics, keep sending those in. Donations, of course, donations are always useful. I'll let you know when things get dire, but you know, it's always good to get donations. Quality control, if you hear any mistakes, things not edited out, please let me know, maybe I can rectify them. Please use the voicemail system. It's not being widely used or the chat room at the moment. I have created a website as well, the Truth Sentinel website. I'll let you know some more details about that later. If you can help with graphics, pictures that I can maybe put up during the videos, also articles. I might create a blog page on the website as well, which people can write topics on there. Also, if you're a researcher, get in contact. Maybe you can do some research for a topic. Email is scottsentinel9@gmail.com. Also, as I have created a website, it's only a basic one at the moment. Anyone who fancies being a website manager, we may have a position there where you could just upload the shows, keep it tidied up, and maybe attach articles to it. Coming up in today's show, we'll have a quick look at mainstream news to see what they're saying, make a few comments about it. Again, I'm not saying that it's the truth, just looking at it. Today we're going to be talking about religion, cults, and looking at Scientology to start off with, and we'll be returning to this topic for the next episode, and perhaps having one whole episode devoted to Scientology. Just to remind you, so we've got the new Truth Sentinel website. I'll let you know the address. It's one of those Wix websites. That's a handy site where you can make your own website. It took about 5 hours to make. I think on a PC it'll load up quite well. Maybe you might have some problems on a tablet or on a mobile phone. Later on, maybe we'll be able to rectify some of those problems. But anyway, the website address is scottsentinel9.wix.com/Truth Sentinel. I don't know if you need to put all that in. You might get away with scottsentinel9.wix.com, but if not, /Truth Sentinel. And you'll find latest episodes on there. And there is a scrapboard page with some tweets and things like that on there. And there's a few other things to check out. All the chat room, the voicemails on there, all the tweets, details about t-shirts, all the connections to various other media. So scottsentinel9.wix.com/Truth Sentinel. Please go and check that out. Remember, we've got 2 YouTube channels, Truth Sentinel and Truth Sentinel 2. Strangely enough, Truth Sentinel 2 has the most subscribers, although I actually put the videos up on Truth Sentinel, the first one. There's a long story about that, but never mind. Today's news then. All still quiet here in Ukraine, as mentioned. I think we're going to know what's going to happen here within the next few months. If things are going to kick off, I reckon it'll happen, and a lot of other people do over the winter anyway. Okay, so just things I noticed in the news. Anonymous were trying to control the Ku Klux Klan's online presence after the KKK threatened to hurt potential protesters in Ferguson, Missouri. And the BBC asked, did Anonymous go too far in fighting the KKK? Seems like a stupid question to me. I mean, what are they trying to imply? The BBC website, whilst I'm not going to completely criticise the BBC website because it's very useful for getting a basic framework of what's happening in the world, they do ask a lot of questions which seem a bit dumb to me. They constantly do articles with questions at the beginning of them, like I mentioned before. Sometimes there's stupid questions like they like to reverse commonly held beliefs, like is milk bad for you? Whilst previously they've done articles about how good it is for you, or they'll write things like, is it really cold in winter? And it just annoys me anyway. Or sometimes they have an agenda with the title or the question, like, are the royals better value than ever? That kind of stuff, which of course no, they're not. Anyway, talking about Ferguson, Missouri, good luck to Pete Wicker from Truth is Stranger Than Fiction, who's appeared on this program, who we'll always be chatting to every month or two. And also with the Truth Alliance guys, we'll be talking to those every now and again. People like Seth Davis and Corey Washington. So there's also been the G20 summit going on. That was in Brisbane, Australia, where I think Putin's been, the media have been saying he's been getting the cold shoulder a bit, but I reckon he probably hasn't. I reckon that's just media spin. I saw him cuddling some koalas anyway. That's actually the first time I've seen Putin smile, and that just goes to show that animals can make even the most evil of people smile once in a while. Okay, what else has been going on? Peter Kassig, ISIS video. That's another example of a BBC question article. The question was, what does the Peter Kassig IS video tell us? Now that's slightly misleading as well, because it suggests that the BBC knows what it tells us, and that it's going to pass that on to its readers, which I don't think the BBC do know what it tells us. They say basically that IS produces propaganda videos of exceptional quality. Well, they do seem to be getting a lot better, that's for sure. The last one, and I do think people should watch some of these videos. The last one was pretty graphic. It did seem like something out of a Tarantino movie, so BBC are right about that. It was very odd. Lots of kind of sharpening knives, and even down to hearing the last gasp of breath from someone who is about to be executed, and expressions on people's faces. It's very odd, but it did look kind of real. I think the thing is, a lot of people think some of these videos are fake. I don't know why they'd have to fake them. That suggests that they wouldn't want to kill anyone, even if ISIS were controlled by Western powers, say UK and US governments. they still would have no problem about killing people, so I'm not sure why they'd have to fake the videos. Some of the earlier ones did look faked, and certainly this one is bizarre, but I have to say it looks pretty real to me. I don't like it when people just say everything is faked without having good reason, really. One thing I would say though, the parents' reaction to Peter Kassig being killed, I found odd. I don't know if you've seen that, how the parents reacted to their son being brutally murdered with his head severed at the feet of the ISIS guy. They seemed very rational about the whole thing. Yeah, they're going to get over it, and I don't know, I found it odd. And I think that's when it comes to things like Sandy Hook and other atrocities, sometimes when we don't know how people are going to react, but I don't know, it just didn't seem right to me. Don't know what to say about that, really. Okay, the BBC also had the gall to highlight Russian propaganda, the Russian propaganda machine, saying the Kremlin's international media operation appears to be going from strength to strength, and how it was coming under increased scrutiny over its lack of editorial balance and accusations it's deliberately using disinformation to counter and divide the West. Sorry BBC, but you do that all the time yourself. But I actually not sure sometimes that the people who write the articles actually see what they're doing. I think they're so used to doing it, they don't realise how biased it is as well. I mean, there's a lot of hypocrisy going on, and also with Obama this week warning Asian countries not to use their financial power to bully smaller countries. How he can say that with a straight face, I just don't know, but it does give us all a good laugh anyway. A British-led consortium has outlined its plans to land a robotic probe on the moon in 10 years' time, and it's trying to raise donations for that at the moment. If you're thinking of donating, donate to Truth Sentinel first, and we can deal with this moon probe later on. Hopefully soon, when all the probes go up onto the moon, we'll see the flagpoles from the US landing and see that nothing suspicious has been happening up there on the moon that we need to know about. Okay, with the child abuse scandal still continuing in the UK, there's been claims now that a Conservative MP murdered a young boy during a depraved sex party. And this is being reported in the newspapers now, and I really hope that some of this stuff will come out about the murders, the paedophilia, you know, even involving high-level ministers. Even there's an accusation against a former Prime Minister about murdering children. I hope it all comes out and that our government collapse anyway. I'd also like to do a show on the paedophile scandal in Westminster, looking for whistleblowers, so please get in touch if you are an abuse victim, if you know of any, if you're very familiar on this subject. I've tried to get in contact with Bill Maloney, David Icke, no luck so far, but I'll keep trying anyway. And please feel free to try on our behalf as well. Remember, if you get guests on this show, you can really take part in making this channel into something very informational. Okay, so as mentioned before, we talked about political correctness and how retarded that's all getting. We spoke to Phil about utopian ideas for changing society last week, and he'll be coming back in a couple of weeks. Let me know what you think of our utopian ideas. Reminder to leave a voicemail or go to the chat room. You can do that on the new website, or you can go to the truthsentinel9.blogspot.co.uk channel. You can click on the links in YouTube on Truth Sentinel, top right, or if you go to the About section, you'll find links to voicemails. No one's left any voicemails today. I think as we get more and more listeners, we'll start getting voicemails. So That's the thing we need to focus on, really. As mentioned, we've got new shorter Sentinel debates, Sentinel chats, which we'll sometimes put up. We're going to go and talk about cults, religions, and start looking at Scientology today. And we'll be focusing on Scientology later on. Not necessarily saying it's a cult, not necessarily saying it's a religion. Some people say it's more of a self-help kind of group anyway. Hopefully we're going to be talking to Karen de la Carrière, a Scientology whistleblower, in an upcoming episode, within the next week or two anyway. I wanted to get a background on the topic before we spoke to Karen, who's dubbed the Queen of Scientology. I mean, Karen married Haber Gents in 1978, and they were sort of the golden couple. Haber was made international president of Scientology. But it all started going wrong, and Karen's going to come on and talk about her experiences of 35 years in Scientology. You know, and she used to rub shoulders with the church's elite, people like John Travolta. I don't know if she met Tom Cruise, I'll ask her. So she's basically spilling the beans, and some say that Scientology have dismissed Karen as being a bit of a lunatic who spreads falsehoods because she's got a personal axe to grind, but, you know, they would say that, wouldn't they? To get a background into Scientology anyway, we're very fortunate to chat to journalist investigator Tony Ortega, who's been studying the religion, cult, self-help group, whatever you want to call it. At this stage, I would want to point out that I'm happy to speak to anyone from Scientology who wants to defend it. We're basically going to be showing the accusations, but I'm not necessarily saying they're all true. Come on and tell us what you think. I did invite Tom Cruise and Kirstie Alley on the show, but so far no response. So read into that what you want. One thing I have been struck by is I heard Kirstie Alley and others mentioned that there was tens of millions of followers of Scientology worldwide, and that's something we could at least start to clear up, because other sources say there's more like 50,000 or even much less than that. Surely that's something that we can all come to a more realistic figure on. It shouldn't be too difficult to find out how many people follow Scientology worldwide. It seems clear it's not tens of millions though. I'm not criticising Scientology, although it's fair to say that the upcoming episodes are going to be fairly critical and biased anyway. But I am very happy to do even a full show on Scientology to dispel any myths or inaccuracies, and I'll have a look around to see if anyone is willing to speak. If you're a Scientologist listening, please get in contact, scottsentinel9@gmail.com. and we can interview you. As long as you're willing to actually answer the questions and don't get offended, then that's fine, we can do that. It's just there are questions to be answered and some accusations, that's all. Without further ado, let's go to Tony Ortega, American journalist and blogger. He was previously the editor-in-chief of the Broward Palm Beach New Times from 2005 to 2007. and the editor-in-chief of The Village Voice in New York from 2007 to 2012. And Tony first reported on Scientology in the 90s, I think whilst he was working for the Phoenix New Times, and he's continued covering the subject throughout his career under various media outlets. Anyway, let's go to the chat I had with Tony. So I'm very pleased to welcome journalist Tony Ortega to speak with us today. Hi Tony, welcome to Truth Sentinel.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming. As I mentioned to you, I'm going to be interviewing Karen, hopefully this week, and I wanted to speak to you first to get a bit of a background on Scientology for me and for the listeners for when we speak to Karen. My only knowledge of Scientology comes from a little bit of research, and I did read Dianetics when I was younger. And I remember it seemed very sort of intelligently written, but that did seem to go around in circles, and I never quite understood what it was trying to say. Almost like intelligent madness, that's what I felt about it. What's your opinion, first of all, on the science behind Scientology? Is there any validity to any of it?
Well, I'll defer to the scientists that have looked into it and found that there's no science at all. Dianetics is actually a fascinating book. Former church member Vance Woodward and I blogged it from cover to cover, and it's always fascinating to me when I hear people say they read it and they thought it was interesting, because I always wonder, did you really read it? If you get down deep into it, it's just a very strange work. I mean, Ron Hubbard was a World War II vet who claimed to have been very injured and had found this process of the mind to heal himself, and so that was the sort of background on this book, that he had discovered the true nature of the human mind and how to heal various illnesses. He claimed that something like 70% of all illnesses are actually just psychosomatic, and so with his counseling, he could heal it. But if you read that book, he not only claims that it's the greatest discovery since man discovered fire. That's literally the first sentence in the book. But that he was the first person to discover how the human mind actually works, and then he counsels people to go back in time to remember what was happening to them in the womb. And the reason that's important is that his theory was virtually every pregnancy is threatened by women making multiple abortion attempts on themselves, and men and women having rough sex and endangering the fetus. And you read this and you think, what is he talking about? I mean, it's his own family members said that basically he was talking about his own life and his own sort of hang-ups. But it's this very bizarre book that claims that pregnancy is this horrible ordeal, and that every woman attempts to kill her fetus 20 or 30 times, and you spend the rest of your life not reaching your full potential because those memories are still hanging around in something called your reactive mind. It's completely ludicrous. There's absolutely no science to back it up. And it did create a fad. There was a real craze when the book first came out. In the first year, people were creating these Dianetics clubs and were trying to help each other remember what they went through in the womb. Well, I mean, come on. The movie The Master does a great job of actually illustrating that, showing these adults pretending like they're in the womb and remembering mom and dad having rough sex. That's what's so interesting to me. One of the things interesting to me about the Church of Scientology is it does the best it can not to discuss openly these ideas, because I think if people understood what's actually in Dianetics, they would be kind of shocked.
Yeah, I didn't really understand it. I don't think I got to the end of it. This was quite some time ago. I just it sounded like it was written by someone intelligent, but I didn't get it, and it did just seem to go around in circles, and I think I got bored. It's quite a big book, Yeah,
well, Hubbard was a professional writer. He was very good at getting people, interested in what he was writing. He had been a pulp writer. He had written a lot of westerns and fantasy and science fiction. I know most people call him a science fiction writer, but that was only one element of what he did. And he was a pro. I mean, he punched out stories every day and for many, many years. And he was good at getting attention. And if you approach Dianetics in that way and look at it as kind of a carnival barker trying to get your attention, he's a master at it. I mean, he keeps dropping hints that he's going to give you the way to unleash this potential you've never had. And to this day, that's really what the come on is with Scientology. I know some people wrestled with, why is this appeal to people? Why do people join? But it's actually very simple, and that is Scientology tells you that you are an immortal being that's lived countless times in the past, and you're being held back because there's this thing called the reactive mind, which prevents you from seeing your true nature. And only Scientology, through its counseling, can erase that reactive mind so that you can then see your immortal self going back millions and billions of years. And once you have that ability, you have many other abilities that make you impervious to illness, allow you the ability to affect matter just with your mind. It essentially promises being a superhuman. And that's been the promise since day one in May 1950 when he first came out with that book, and it still is today. Again, they don't like to advertise that, and when they ask the celebrities always just say something like, "Oh, it helped me in my life, and you should just read a book and find out yourself." But if they were honest and talk about what it's really about, it's about convincing you that you're this immortal, ultimately powerful being that someday will rule entire universes. I mean, that's what Hubbard was promising.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that might be attractive to some people, being an immortal being and
a few.
running their own universe.
It's only ever attracted a very small slice of the public. There's always people that are interested in that for whatever reason, but it's never been a widely attractive idea.
Yeah, I mean, there's if you just look at superheroes and the whole the amount of people that follow all the different superheroes, then it's a fairly popular idea.
It is, and I don't blame people that they want to improve themselves. I mean, who doesn't? And that's, in some countries, Scientology is a self-help group, but in other countries, they say they're a church and a religion. And that gives them a certain amount of cover, that they don't have to talk about themselves or how they spend their money. And they use that religious cloaking in a very effective way. But say, in Israel, for example, they can't say that they're a church. And so they say, we're just going to help you improve yourself. And I remember Janet Reitman, who had a terrific book about Scientology 3 years ago. We were talking about, I think I was at a talk she gave, and she was saying that at some point, in the 80s or the 90s, the Scientology Act, they've always had this terrible reputation, and they've always had problems with the press, and most of the public repels at the name Scientology. And so they actually hired some consultants to give them some advice. What can we do to grow in popularity? And those consultants said, drop the religion stuff. You're not a religion. You are a self-help group, and self-help groups are very popular. And if you would just say that, and Janet Reitman, in her talk said that they were given that advice and they rejected it.
But being accepted as a religion does give you some benefits, doesn't it? Like tax breaks and some protection in the law and things like that.
Absolutely, no question. I mean, that's what how they first. It's interesting because when Hubbard came out with it in 1950, the full title of Dianetics is Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health. And to this day, if you talk to long-time Scientologists that got into it in the 70s, they'll tell you that they didn't get into a religion. They were told this was an applied philosophy, and it was scientific. And this ability to go back in time and relive your past lives millions of years ago, they said it's an exact science. They even have a little machine called the E-meter that they claim helps them pinpoint those memories and sift out what they went through. And to them, this is science. This is absolute science. There's no faith to it. I remember one longtime Scientologist trying to help me understand the upper levels and why he was attracted to Scientology. He said, Tony, I'm a skeptic, and what I like about Scientology is they don't ask you to believe anything. There's no belief at all. It's a science, see? So from the beginning, L. Ron Hubbard was promoting this idea of science, but he ran into trouble because right from Dianetics in 1950, he was making these health claims that I mentioned before. Well, in the 50s, the U.S. government was more vigilant about that kind of thing. And by the mid-50s, the FDA was getting unhappy because they could see that this group, these Scientologists, were making claims about being able to heal just about anything. So in 1963, immediately, within the first couple of years, Hubbard was running into problems with the FDA. And in 1953 is when he sent a letter to one of his closest followers, and he literally used the words, "Let's try the religion angle." I mean, he actually said it that way. So from the beginning, it was pretty clear that Hubbard saw in calling Scientology religion a way to deal with government interference. And I've talked to people that were around in the mid-'60s, and around 67, 68, overnight, they started calling themselves ministers and wearing clerical collars because that's when they lost their tax-exempt status, and Hubbard wanted to get it back. They were not tax-exempt from 1967 to 1991. And they fought that whole time with the IRS. The IRS finally caved in 1991 and started a study that resulted in a settlement in 1993. And they've been tax-exempt since then, and it saved them $1 billion tax bill. So you're right. Calling yourself a church calling themselves a church has given them this tax-exempt status, which has saved them billions. And it also allows them to go into court and say, people are always suing them for things like fraud, and they just turn around and say, yeah, but we're a church, you can't inquire into our internal activities. And the courts struggle with that. I mean, I'm following a couple of court cases right now where that's always Scientology's first defense. We're a church, leave us alone. And it makes these lawsuits difficult, even when it's there's a case in Florida right now where a couple are suing over having given hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations, and they claim they have evidence that it was very fraudulent. So they were building a new building, for example. They wanted to put a big cross up on the top, the Scientology cross, which is very different than a Christian cross. And so they asked this couple to donate, I don't know how much, tens of thousands of dollars to pay for this big cross. And then they found, so that they would sort of be the donors for the cross. And then they found out later that they were hitting up other people for the same thing. So, you can say, well, this is donations because you believe in this church, but these folks are saying, hang on, wait a minute, there's also, questions of how you do it. But that religious cloaking, again, makes it very complicated in court.
Is that a cross? Is that a symbol of Scientology then?
Well, Scientology came up with this cross. It's like a Christian cross, and then there are 4 more points that come out at angles. And it's been pointed out that what it resembles is the Rosicrucian cross, and which is the cross that Aleister Crowley used. And that's a whole other interesting side of Scientology. After World War II, before Dianetics, L. Ron Hubbard went to Los Angeles and moved into the Pasadena home of a Caltech rocket scientist named Jack Parsons, very kind of a famous guy in his own right. Jack was an occultist, and he had a large house that he rented out rooms, but the rule was only eccentrics could live there. And in 1945, there were people, there were kind of bohemian artists, that kind of thing. And what Jack was into was the occult, and in particular, he was the local sort of representative for Aleister Crowley's Thelema group. And it's a kind of they believe in what they call magic with a M-A-G-I-C-K, and Aleister Crowley believed that they could bring forth these special entities on Earth, and Jack got Hubbard into it, and so they kept records, and we know that this went on. So Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard were doing these bizarre occult sex rituals in 1946, and Lawrence Wright spelled those out pretty clearly in his book Going Clear. And so that was in 46. Dianetics came out in 1950s. Scientology was codified in 1952, and various scholars have shown, academic scholars, that you can see that influence of Crowley and the occult directly on Scientology. The way it uses levels, the way levels always start at 0, and the way that they use the Crowley cross. So, it resembles a Christian cross, and they call it a church, but really early Scientology has more in common with the occult.
And do Scientologists deny that link to Aleister Crowley?
Yeah, they do. Scientology has this really hilarious explanation for why L. Ron Hubbard was performing bizarre occult sex rituals in a house in Pasadena. Their claim, in World War II, he had done training in intelligence. He was a lieutenant in the Navy, and so their claim is that the Navy or the FBI sent Hubbard into that occult house in order to break up black magic on the West Coast. I mean, they literally, use words like that, and it's ludicrous. There's no record of that at all. I mean, it's Hubbard was into it. He had been interested in the occult for a long time, and again, you can see a lot of that influence on Scientology itself. There's an Ohio State University professor named Hugh Urban who did a terrific study showing the parallels between Crowley's occult and Hubbard's Scientology. And if you just search on my name, Tony Ortega, Scientology occult, you'll easily find that it's from when I was at the Village Voice, and I put side by side the Crowley occult cross and the Scientology cross, and you'll see they're an exact match.